Should today's executives act as coaches to their revenue team? We dig deep into these questions as well as dissect different sales cultures and how they react to different coaching styles. Stick with us until the end on the new episode of the 2.5 Salesmen. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the 2.5 Salesmen. I'm your host Mario, together with my co-host and partner Noam, where we talk with today's executives, specifically on the revenue side, on what is working and what is not working. Today's guest, Lena from Bestow, if I pronounce it correctly. She's a chief revenue officer. Lena, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the warm intro and thank you for having me, Mario.
No problem. So today's topic is one that is very dear to both me and Noam. And to thank you for agreeing to explore this topic with us. And that is, should today's executives act as coaches? Well, specifically, we will talk about the revenue executives, right? Should they act as coaches to their team members? So before we dive into this topic, Lena, if you could just maybe introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, your background, and then we will dive into the topic.
Oh, happy to. I have a slightly unusual walk to the CRO role, which I'll take you guys on. And it all starts back in my home country in Ukraine, where I, graduated from one of the finance major specialties, and I was just looking for ways to have a truly interesting and impactful job. And what was happening at this time in Ukraine is management consulting was just basically entering the country. And so I started my career at PwC, but then very shortly moved to McKinsey, basically as soon as they opened their office in Kiev. Had the pleasure of being the first hire to the Kiev office with just a couple of people transferring from other offices. And so effectively worked at a startup office of large management consulting companies, which is probably how I ended up choosing startups as my passion and my field. Um, with McKinsey, I had an opportunity to move to the New York office after business school. And that's where I ultimately started working with technology companies and financial services companies as clients, and dove into what really drives growth at these companies. Strategy, sales, marketing, worked for large leading companies, trying to ultimately speed up their growth. And while that was a truly fun and educational experience, I did have an itch to get my hands dirty with actual execution. And that's how I ultimately moved first to JP Morgan, where I had sort of more hands-on experience with standing up a tech enabled platform for a small business retirement every day for 1K. And that's where I ultimately fell in love with fintechs. I moved to a fintech called Earnest as a general manager, got promoted to the executive team, and so had my first seat on the executive team as more of a sort of cross-functional leader driving the P&L results of a product, with a dual responsibility also over the company strategy. And then 3 years ago, I was smitten by the vision that Bestow founders had to evolve life insurance with the use of technology. And I joined Bestow as a chief revenue officer, to ultimately drive growth for the company, overseeing a host of revenue functions, everything from pre-sales, sales, partnerships, customer success, revenue strategy, and operations. And I have been with the company more than 3 years now, driving revenue from ultimately very, very little from just a tiny pilot in the SaaS area all the way to a revenue sufficient to raise Series D now.
Nice.
Impressive.
Very
Impressive.
impressive. Yeah. All right. Thank you for this intro. Now let's dive into the topic. So one of the things Norm and I get, especially when we get engagement with companies, is executives tell us, and I would open the floor for debate on this, is I don't have time to do coaching, right? Okay, so I know what Norm did, but for me, I was always the executive plus coach to my team, and I always found the time to coach my team members. So, what are your guys' thoughts on the I don't have the time to to work to coach my team members? And by the way, the weekly pipeline reviews, I don't consider that coaching.
Yeah, that's no coaching.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I'm happy to offer my perspective, and I would love to hear from you guys, kind of based on your experience, because my perspective is again highly based on what it means to be an executive at a startup, which is frankly different from being an executive at a Fortune 500 company. And so while I can very much relate to the time crunch type of a gripe that you hear from many startup executives, you are always extra busy. I do believe that investing in coaching is frankly one of the most important investments that you have to be making on a regular, because for a couple of reasons. One, ultimately, executive at a startup is like akin to an army general. You've got the founders that are responsible for the overall vision, like they sort of steer the whole company in a certain direction. But it's ultimately on you as a functional executive to translate this into the actual strategy as it relates to your function, and frankly understand how this impacts your executive team peers. And the next step from that strategy is actually how do you drive execution? And to drive that execution, you have to get on the same page with your team. And so this is where coaching starts.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
I'll disagree here. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate, and Noam, you can jump in. So
Yeah, well.
if you're in a fairly early stages, so let's say you're a revenue executive and you have maybe 10 team members, you're still required to have a quota. You're still required to hunt deals. So how do you hunt deals? How do you drive strategy? How do you align team members and then have time for coaching?
Well, and that's why being a CRO at an early stage is just not everyone's cup of tea.
You mean 16-hour days?
Yes, well, those two, or just ruthless prioritization.
Yeah. No,
'Cause
Noam,
frankly,
what do you think on this?
Let me, work with, let's say, with more entrepreneurial management, so style. So let me divide the. So Lena, I will take the example not as early stages, but rather is the management style an entrepreneurial one, or the management style is let's say the bureaucratic machine as we call it, which is more corporate style, right? We can find early stages companies which are much more mature simply because management was brought in from, let's say, Fortune 100 companies. So then you got experts that manage things in a different way. So I'll make the distinguish with the management style. To be honest, I see no difference. I think the responsibility is on the executives. Now, the reason that doesn't happen, and I can clearly see that in the last decade when I'm mainly coaching myself, is that executives don't know how to coach.
Oh.
And hey, I'm speaking about myself in the, let's say, half of my almost 30 years experience in B2B sales. I don't think I was coaching. I don't think I was even managing. I think I was commanding, right? So very, very not mature, I would say, management style, if management at all. So it was about monitoring, it was about controlling, it's about directing, it was about, giving people orders on what to do. And coaching in my mind was, let me tell you what to do, and that's the best thing. So from my perspective, is I think that a lot of sales executives, they're there because they're top performers. They're there because companies want to make sure they stay in the company because they're rainmakers. So what happens is that you got a bunch of people very, very talented in sales, but very, very poor. Pardon me. Hey, I don't want you guys to leave the podcast, but I don't mean to be mean. I just say what I mean, which means basically you guys, you don't know how to coach. And to know and to master coaching, it is a profession by itself, which is a bit different than, because, Mario, you're a better coach than I am when it comes to coaching executives. Honest to God, I think you're a better coach than I am. But,
You're better when working with senior salespeople.
yeah. Oh, no,
Yeah.
no argument about that. I love this one as well. So,
Yeah.
I love that. I love this type of work. But here's the thing. I think that executives, we don't know how to coach. We don't know how to integrate that on our, we can dive into that. Lena, I'd love to get your opinion that we don't know how to become, like, how do I stop being the manager and become a coach, which is a kind of a different, mode of operation, thinking, discussion. And that is maybe a little bit of lose your power. And there's a difference between a coach and a mentor, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think we executives, I don't think we know how to coach, honest to God. We can mentor, but we can't really coach. Not that easy.
Yeah, a very interesting perspective. And hey, like you are probably true that an average individual that has gotten to the executive seat is maybe not the most talented coach out there because they have, frankly, other stuff that say, leverage to their strengths to get where they got, and it's not always coaching per se. But this is kind of what's my question. Is the exam question of whether we should be coaching or whether the current generation of executives is good at it?
Oh, that's a brilliant question.
That's a brilliant question.
Yeah. I would say, okay, so I can tell you my perspective. So how I approached it when I ran, revenue teams. I would coach only my top performers. So when I say coach, I do mean coach because I went it for, I learned NLP, I learned the art and science of coaching fairly on. So I had some toolkit, maybe not the best toolkit, but I had some kind of a toolkit. That kind of equipped me. Okay, how do I coach my people? Right. So what I would do is you had to be a top performer in order to get coaching from me.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone else, there's the line. When you hit this revenue goal, I can work with you.
That's frankly smart, right? Because this is one of those ruthless prioritization rules that I mentioned, right? Like if you have to be smart with your time, where do you put most of your effort?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as us as parents, right? So when your kid comes back from school and it has 3 grades and 2 are top and 1 sucks, most of the parents just talk about the grade that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
From very early on, we've been taught to talk about things we are bad at, not foster the things that we are good at. And in the companies, this is what happens. Most attention and coaching goes to the people who suck, people who are low performers, instead of going to the top echelon best performers to make them even, because the best performer will go from 110% quota to 200% quota. And that's doubling his or her output, right? but the crappy performer will go from 50% quota to 70% quota, which is like a 20% increase. This is 100% increase. This is 20%. Like it.
Yeah.
But for me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Then, by the way, that's an excellent observation on how we as a society work to like basically focus on how we become well-rounded as opposed to develop sparks and spikes. Yeah, here's what I'm also wondering, because Maria, like I think you're talking about like a fairly in-depth dedicated coaching. I might be applying a bit of a broader definition here, because what's in my head is like coaching frankly starts like from the interview process when you are telling people like, hey, this is what it takes to be successful in this role. And then when they join, you also tell them, hey, like if I were in your shoes, this is what I would do. This is whom I would talk to. This is materials I would review. I would like really become an expert on our product. I would really, go after this type of people in your network to ultimately, have the mechanism to generate leads. Or I would go and, brush up on the certain types of skills that you can require on your job. And this might to you guys be more as okay, business as usual advice to a newcomer. To me, I'm including this into frankly broader framework of coaching that you start applying to people even before you know if they're going to be top performers.
But it begins. Oh, you say it begins in interviewing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because frankly, you have different ways you can interview. I try to be very transparent of what the job entails and what it takes to be successful. And
well,
is that the candidates listen to what you're saying and frankly self-selecting based on their own strengths and ability to achieve. As you, of course,
No, I know you were going to say something, but let me just quickly jump in. Lena, do you think people are self-conscious enough to assess themselves? It's the Kruger-Dunning effect, right? People tend to view themselves to be better than they actually are.
Yeah, it's a mix. You probably have a good set of people that overestimate their capabilities, but I've definitely had more than one conversation with someone who was recommended as a top performer. And you tell them like, here's what it's gonna take. And frankly, the most typical scenario for me is someone who worked for a more established company, and you tell them like, here's what it takes at a startup. And they realize that it's either not something that they have the stomach for or not something that they're good at. And that's the kind of point where they self-select. And so to me, that's a little bit of that kind of, frankly, the establishing that initial trust that you're gonna require for coaching and being upfront about all the upsides of the job, but also the hardships that any job can bring. Yeah, would love your perspective. Like, do you feel like some of that happens in the early stages, either or when the person?
I like that I like that this I would say insight that you brought into this discussion. I'll give you the way I see it. Executives today, sales executives, we are on the hunt for top performers. So we interview people, and we interview them as if we're testing them. But to be honest, I think they're testing us as well. So let's say that if I'm a top performer sales account manager, a senior key account manager, and I'm looking for a host, I'm looking for an interesting company to work for, so I can make my money, I can make my, I can work relatively, let's say, easygoing, but I can still make my quota. So I'll be looking for a place that is challenging, but rewarding. But I also look for who would manage me, right? So who is this top executive, he or she, doesn't matter, that will manage me, and will this person make me a better version of myself 3, 4, 5 years down the road? So when I'm working with executives today and they're saying, we're interviewing, I'm saying, so what are you looking for? We're looking for top performance. Okay, good for you. But our top performers are looking for you. Yeah, so everybody wants to be, everybody wants to be surrounded by top performers, but would top performance choose you over someone else? So, they're kind of doing like, oh, I don't know. I think so. Yeah, this is a good company. I'm saying I didn't talk about the company. I'm talking about you in particular. So the way you make a differentiation between yourself and someone else would always be the reason. I think that the X factor is, are you able to become a coach? Lena, same as you said, it starts with the interview. Because at the interview, I'd like every, person that is being interviewed would say, I want to be managed by this person. I want to be coached by this person because this person is busy not with micromanaging me and seeing what I've done with this or other company, but this person is busy with one thing and one thing only, which is to make a version, invest in me, make me a better person. So this person is amazing. I want to work for this person, not this company. So I completely agree with you. In order to become, in order to kind of create a disturbance in the mind of the person that is being interviewed, that this person will go out and say, you know something, the salary might be average, but hey, this is good. I want to be managed by this person. And not
But
because, I give more vacations or whatever, right? So it's not about that.
Yeah.
well, if you are in Germany, that's the first thing everyone asks. How many
Yeah,
vacation
yeah.
times I have?
How many days I'm going to get paid and not work for you?
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
As simple as that.
In US is how many hours of vacation I get this year.
Yeah, yeah.
Good one. Yes.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Lynn. Go ahead.
Oh no, just I just wanted to agree. Noam, I think you are just adding to the recipe of how to become that talent magnet, and it's ultimately part of that recipe is to offer coaching to people that are seeking learning and development and like ultimately want to become better at their jobs.
True.
Yeah.
The, think of it this way. I know that's weird. It's kind of a little bit of shifting from the topic, but I think it is part of it. Think of it like this, you're managing sales, you're responsible for, revenue coming in. You can achieve your goals if you're going to have top performers or more top performers under your shoulder, under your wing. So, what's your tools in the box to attract top performers? Let's say that you have zero control over compensation plans, and this has already been dictated. You got zero influence on, what kind of office and car or benefits would come with this compensation. And then you got zero whatever influence on what, as well as on
On the market itself.
market itself, your product fit. So basically, you're useless. You're kind of, we call it here in Tel Aviv, you're the pigeon. They're the pigeon that carries that carries the message from management. So the boss said, Mama, we got to make the money. And so this is worthless. And nobody wants to work for worthless people. So I
Yeah.
think you have to come up with your X factor. And your X factor is, how do you take your knowledge and experience and you actually implement it, place it, implement it with your own top performance? You can only do that while becoming a coach on a daily basis, which is completely 180 degrees shift from
Yeah.
what we kind of used to do or think we need to do.
My first ever boss in sales, and this is when I was a skinny. Yes, I was skinny once. No, yes,
Yeah,
I
I was
was
skinny. I was skinny too.
in my early 20s. So my first ever boss told me, whenever you come into a company, make sure two things happen. One, if you leave, when you leave that company, either leave it with a lot of knowledge or leave it with a lot of money, preferably with both.
Mm,
But if you can't make a lot of money and you can't learn anything, get the fuck out.
yeah.
And I think for today's, if we are talking young kids or people just looking for sales jobs, looking for where they want to end up, that's a really good strategy. Can I learn and can I make money? Preferably both.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it goes to also just how you structure relationships with your team. I think, Noam, you were talking about sort of that manager versus coach persona,
Yeah.
which I'm sure all of us had to basically assume multiple times during an average work day. Right? There are times where you have to be a manager, like, and just be clear about what are the goals and what it's going to take, like, for us to achieve them. But there are also times where you need to sort of step into that coach persona or just a trusted advisor persona, frankly, for your team, and understand where their head is at. And are they going to be with you on the journey to achieve those goals, right? And
Yeah.
ultimately, like, are they viewing this job where they are right now as an opportunity to gain knowledge, make money, achieve certain career ambitions? Or are they, looking for the door already because there is some sort of disconnect between, what they are aspiring to and what the job is offering?
Well, I think I'd say, this what you're saying, Lena, right now is bringing me to the next question. Where's how do you, as a manager, as a person responsible for money coming into the company, revenue coming in, where do you put the line? When are you a manager with a more directive approach, monitoring, controlling, systems in place, and then you're monitoring results, and when do you're becoming a coach? And the next question is, once you got this clear state of mind to when and what, how do you make the shift? Which then lead to the third question, how do you ensure that your people actually understand that shift in work style?
Oh man.
Basically, guys, I gave you enough questions. I can go and make myself a cup of coffee.
I mean, golly F, man. Like, how do we continue from here?
Yes.
Well, I'll offer a few thoughts, but that's an excellent set of questions. So one, again, my assumption that you're moving between these two personas multiple times during the workday, and where I feel like coaching persona has a better chance of thriving is more one-on-one or like very small group interactions, where you just can be real with people. You don't like have to talk about, again, big strategy, big vision. You just can actually start that conversation with like, how is your day going, and how's your experience been like this week. And so I like to have weekly one-on-ones with all of my directs, and it's half an hour where for sure we can touch on some sort of ongoing stuff, but like the main agenda is just for me to understand how they're doing. And that's usually a place where I can share some coaching. And by the way, I also believe that there is some upward coaching that can come from those one-on-ones, because you also want to hear from them, their feedback. They might be excellent at spotting what you can do better, and you should take it as a coaching opportunity. But then I tend to have sort of more structured stand-ups with my team, where I'm for sure more in a manager seat. And I know there's kind of like a little bit of that, I guess, different philosophy. Okay, do you use your team meetings as like just a way to socialize, or do you actually use them as a status check? I definitely use them as a status check. My team knows this. I have sort of multiple flavors of this depending on kind of where we are in the months. And like, I think just differentiating of like what hat you are wearing depending on the style of the meeting is my life hack. The other one is it also depends on what times you're going through. Is it good times for the company, or is it a crunch time? Are you sort of already on pace to achieve your goals and overachieve, and like there is a lot of stuff happening that you've been wanting to happen? Or are you like literally facing an existential stress threat as a startup, and you have to go get that revenue unless and if you don't do that, something really negative is going to happen? And in the good times, you have a luxury to lean in more into coaching. And in the crunch times, you actually also have a leeway to lean in and more into management, and the team will understand the why, if you of course convey the why.
Oh. Uh-huh. So I would say, well, at least I'll answer to one of your questions, Norm.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah. And I forgot most of them. Well, for me this is a very difficult thing to do if you're not a trained coach. And we can debate whatever methodologies you can use. So you can use masterful coaching, so Robert Hargrove, you can use NLP, you can use action coaching, Erickson, whatever it is. Like if you don't have any structure on how to actually run a coaching conversation, this would be a very difficult thing to go into and go out of, go into and go out of. So if you don't have a framework, which kind of goes back to your first assertion, which is executives don't know how to coach. And then they would do command and conquer, or they would do a version of empathetic, oh, we are at this stage, so they would kind of feel, but that's not coaching.
No, that's not coaching.
Coaching lives in the domain of winning. Coaching lives in the domain of accomplishment. This is where coaching lives. So, empathy.
No.
Yeah, you're human. You should have, but
we're all human, even a coach needs to be empathic. But, let's take there's different types of coaching, but, think of it this way. The Russian ballet coach, which then trains and coach young ladies or girls on how to become the next, not even ballet, you know what I'm talking about, the from the age of 3, they're like under
I know.
strict regime and of discipline, what to eat, what to do, trains 25 hours a day. They got kind of wake up 1 hour earlier, right? There's nothing else but this thing that needs to be done. You can argue if that's a coach or not. I think it's a coach. The level of empathy at that environment is 0 to none. So you can become a very, you could say, harsh, strict, tough coach, but you're still a coach. You can embrace empathy every once in a while, but that is a different thing. So I don't see that competing, or I don't see that on the same.
No, 100%.
Scale.
And I love this example. I'll give you a sports example, which is Tim Grover. You guys know who Tim Grover is? Probably not. Well, he was the personal coach of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
So after every game, Coach Grover would go to Jordan and say, hey, after every game, after every day, regardless if it was a game day or not, he would say 5, 6, or 7. And then Michael would say a number, 5, 6, or 7, and he would wake up at that time, and they will have a coaching session, like a training at that specific time in a day. So he would say 5 a.m., dude, 5 a.m., 2-hour practice.
Yeah.
Oh.
Come on. And I stand by what I said. Coaching, it lives in the domain of winning and domain of accomplishment. Now, again, it's not mutually exclusive with empathy. But even in your ballet example, what do these girls want? Do they want to dance for the most prestigious ballet? I don't know much about ballet, so I'm probably going to butcher it here. But do they want to dance for the most prestigious ballet group in the world?
Yes.
If the answer is yes, this is how you do it. Do you want to be the best basketball player of all time? You wake up at 5 a.m. and you do a 2-hour session where you puke after the session. And then we do it tomorrow. And then you puke again. We do it tomorrow and we puke again and day after. One time you stop puking and become phenomenal.
But here, here's the thing. And by the way, this again, for me, it's from my my old military days, but the commanding officer could be your best coach. And usually in the Army, commanding officers are your coach. They're the one that trains you, and then they're the one that takes you to, to be on their, their side. You need to be on their side when the times, in battle. So think of it this way. A commanding officer will take whomever, to the playground, as you said, let's coach, let's work on that. So you need to know exactly what your top performer is missing. You need to communicate that. And I think, if I'm also helping answering my own questions here, it is you have to build a communication structure which each and every one of your employees, your top, so if you have a team of 80 people, you have to build 80 structures if you want to become their coach. And then you have to kind of, if person is coming, you're saying, what do you need me? You need me as your manager, you need me as your coach. State your purpose so we can have a discussion. And then you, according to the situation, you change situation to where you want to be. Basically, that's the way I would recommend that. You can't guess it, and you can't you need to be open about it. And you ask, what is it that you read now? You need me to tell you what to do, or you need me to train you, you need me to coach you how to do it better next time. And then according to the answer, to the situation, you then work. Because a coach needs the full commitment of the coachee to help them achieve what they want to achieve.
Doesn't work without it.
It's not going to work any other way.
I think you're opening this conversation to kind of two more flavors. One, coaching and feedback, like we just discussed, coaching and empathy.
Yeah.
What connection between coaching and ability to give effective feedback, ability to effectively receive feedback. And I think the second one, let's take an example where you have a team of 80. Are you really expected to be a coach to all 80? Or are you just a coach to your direct team? And then what's the expectation from them? Do they need to be able to coach the rest? Or is it even a different approach? Do you need to be the coach to top performers wherever they are in your org, irrespective of levels?
Yeah.
I think those are very interesting considerations.
Oh yeah. Well, since we are getting close to the end of the podcast, I don't want to open, I have 7 more topics we can explore here, but I would just want to touch a little bit on, Noam is 170 years old. I am in my mid 40s, and Lena, you are in your early 30s, obviously.
I'm 18 forever now.
18, yes. So generation 2000. So, and let's scratch this a little bit, because Noam and I work with all sorts of people with let's say all ages, right? I like working with junior people. I know how to approach them. Noam likes to work with, if you don't have at least 15 years of experience, just go away from me.
Don't knock on this door. Nobody's here.
Nobody's here. So, and let's take your, Lena, your point on feedback. So, extremely important, maybe not how you give it, but how you receive it. And then how do you approach that with different generations? Because you have 20-something-year-olds who, they grew up with Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, so that was there when they were born. Then you have the 30-year-olds, still digital natives, right? Then you have us, millennials we are 40, and we kind of entered the digital age when we were in kind of early 20s, and then everyone else. So how do you approach that? How do you approach if you have 3 team members with 3 generations. I mean, that's not an easy team to manage, yet alone coach.
Fire the young ones, hire the veterans. Well, you ask for it.
It's funny because I was about to say that it's interesting. I have experience managing Gen X and millennials. I have never had a Gen Z direct yet. So I frankly, I'm very curious to experience that and see how that's going to be different. From what I hear, it is different.
Yeah.
Well, it's the different needs and different expectations. Like I was brought up, and you guys can comment. I was brought up like, shut up, do it this way, and this is gonna work, and then go and perform. Right? Like there was no, hey, do you need a hug and stuff like that. That was when I was, even when I entered the workforce, and I was like in my early 20s. That was it. This was nowhere. Like I never felt love. It's just tough.
Less room for discourse, less expectations of empathy, more of just sort of reporting relationship.
Yeah. Just suck it up. All right. So we are at the end. This was a phenomenal conversation. I can't believe we talked about like almost 50 minutes. So this was really cool. I do hope you had a really good time with us. So for the end of the podcast, we give everyone 30 seconds if you want to plug something in. So your company, maybe some initiative that you have, maybe you're hiring. So you have 30 seconds, plug away, and we will finish up the podcast.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. It was so much fun to chat with you guys during the recording, and even before we hit record, like we already got into deep philosophical questions. Would definitely love to get together again and go deep on philosophical thoughts here. As for the 30 seconds, I'll mention that I am actually hiring. So for the experienced sales and partner success candidates, please just go check out Bestow.com. We have a couple of very senior and very impactful roles open. So looking to see more talent.
Can they, we will leave your, and I will tag you on LinkedIn. Can they ping you on LinkedIn and tell that they saw it on this podcast all the way to the end? Yep.
I'll just mention that we have vertical SaaS platforms. So life insurance experience and contacts are very valuable for both roles. So that's my consideration for the candidates as they apply.
All right. That's fine. So, Lena, again, thank you so much. Noam, pleasure as always. Listening to the old folk around the fire.
You have to respect the elders.
You have to respect the elders. Come on. And for everyone sticking so far, please make sure to like and subscribe to our podcast. Please check out Lena. We will post her LinkedIn in the comments. We will post this on LinkedIn as well. She is hiring at her. Grab a phone and call her. Pitch. You are in sales, so pick up the damn phone and call her. Come on.
Pick up the phone.
Pick up the phone. Until next time, thank you, everyone, and ciao. Goodbye.